trust, once shattered, can never be fully rebuilt. But what happens when the person you trusted the most turns their back on you? In today's story, we're diving deep into the emotional turmoil of a man who finds himself at the crossroads of heartbreak and betrayal. This isn't just a tale about a cheating wife. It's about loyalty, love, and the harsh reality of what happens when those things fade away. Meet Arif, a man who thought his marriage was built on unwavering trust. He spent years building a life with his wife, Sana, never imagining that one day everything he believed in would be crushed by the weight of her secret. When he discovers the truth, the world he once knew falls apart. The pain isn't just from the betrayal. It's the realization that his loyalty meant nothing in her eyes. But this isn't the end of the story. The aftermath of Arif's discovery leads to a wake-up call that neither he nor Sana was ready for. As the truth comes to light, Arif is forced to confront more than just his wife's actions. He must face his own choices, his dignity, and the strength to move forward, even if it means letting go of everything he once held dear. What will happen next? Will they both face the consequences of their actions? Or is there still a chance for redemption? Stay tuned as we unravel the next chapter of this painful yet gripping journey. Arif had always been a man of routine, someone who valued consistency and trust above all else. He worked long hours, sacrificing his time for a future he envisioned with Sana. She had always been the love of his life, the one person he believed he could count on forever. Their relationship, once filled with laughter and warmth, had slowly turned into something mechanical over the years. Life had become a series of daily tasks, work, chores, and the occasional weekend outing. Somewhere along the way, the spark that once kept their bond alive had started to flicker out. But Arif never noticed. He trusted that things would get better, that love would eventually find its way back. But then, the discovery came. It wasn't a grand gesture or a dramatic confrontation. It was a series of small signs that Arif couldn't ignore. Late nights, distant looks, unexplained absences. At first, he convinced himself it was all in his head, that the stress of life had made him paranoid. But when he found the evidence, messages, pictures, things that shouldn't have been there, everything changed. It wasn't just that Sana had betrayed him. It was the fact that she had been hiding it so well, lying with such ease. The realization crushed him. Now, standing in the silence of their home, Arif was left to piece together the fragments of his broken heart. Was this really the woman he had spent years with? Could he ever forgive her? The more he thought about it, the less sure he became. And as the hours ticked by, the question lingered in his mind. What had driven her to this point? As the days went by, Arif's mind raced. He couldn't stop replaying every moment with Sana, wondering where things had gone wrong. Had she always been this distant? Or had something changed recently? There was no way to pinpoint exactly when the cracks in their relationship started showing. He was so caught up in his own world, buried in work and responsibilities, that he hadn't noticed the growing divide between them. The guilt gnawed at him. Had he failed her in some way? Was he so focused on the future that he overlooked the present? Meanwhile, Sana seemed to withdraw further into herself. The tension between them was suffocating. She no longer made eye contact when they spoke, her voice cold and distant. Arif could feel the walls she was building around herself. He wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but each time he tried, the words got stuck in his throat. He didn't know how to approach her, didn't know if there was even a point in trying. Sana, on the other hand, felt the weight of her own actions pressing down on her. She had tried to justify it to herself. Her reasons for stepping outside their marriage, the loneliness that had crept in when Arif became more absorbed in his work. But as the days passed and Arif grew more distant, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Was this really worth it? Could there still be a way back from the mess they had created? The doubt in her heart grew with each passing moment, but so did the fear of facing the consequences. The silence in the house was deafening. Arif couldn't shake the feeling that they were both trapped in a web of their own making. Every time he looked at Sana, he felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and confusion. Yet there was still a part of him that longed to understand her. The hurt he felt was overwhelming, but so was the uncertainty about what would come next. Could he really just walk away from everything they had built together? Or was there still a chance to salvage what remained? Sana hesitated, looking between the man and Arif, before she finally spoke. This is Faizan. Arif felt his world tilt. Faizan? The name echoed in his mind, but it meant nothing. Before he could question further, Faizan stepped forward. I think you need to hear the full truth, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Everything that's been going on, the betrayal, it's not what you think. Arif's mind spun as he processed the words. Sana's affair, the secret she'd kept. It wasn't just about what Arif had assumed. Faizan's next words hit harder than anything he had ever imagined. Sana never wanted to hurt you. She didn't betray you with me. I'm your brother. That evening, the tension finally reached its breaking point. Sana had been acting strange all day, avoiding his gaze, fidgeting with her phone, as if she was waiting for something. Arif felt the storm inside him rising. His heart pounded as he approached her, standing in the doorway of the living room where she was sitting on the couch, lost in thought. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them crackled with unspoken words, unanswered questions. I need to know. Arif's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. He couldn't hold it in anymore. Why? Why did you do this? Sana froze. The weight of his question hung in the air, suffocating them both. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. Her eyes welled up, and for the first time in days, she looked at him. Not with guilt, but with raw vulnerability. You don't understand, she started, but the doorbell rang, cutting her off. Who could it be now? The sudden ring of the doorbell echoed through the room, snapping both of them out of their trance. Arif's heart raced as he looked at Sana, who seemed just as startled. The moment had been suspended in time, each of them teetering on the edge of a decision neither was ready to make. The uncertainty in the air was thick. Would this be the moment they finally faced the truth, or would something else intervene? Sana quickly wiped her eyes and stood up, her movements frantic, as if trying to regain control of a situation that had already spiraled beyond her. Arif remained frozen, torn between the overwhelming need to confront her and the nagging feeling that whatever was waiting behind that door might change everything. Sana hesitated for a split second before heading to the door, her face pale. Arif followed her, every step heavier than the last. He could feel the weight of what was about to unfold. Was this someone who could make everything worse? Or was it a sign, a twist of fate, that would force them to face what was really at stake? Sana opened the door slowly, and standing there was someone neither of them had expected. The shock of seeing the person on the other side left them both speechless. The air grew colder, the tension unbearable. Sana opened the door, and there, standing in the dim light of the hallway, was a man Arif had never seen before. His presence was unsettling, and something about his calm demeanor struck Arif like a punch to the gut. Sana stepped back, her face turning pale as she took in a sharp breath. "Who is this?" Arif demanded, his voice shaking with both fury and fear. The revelation rocked him to his core. His eyes locked onto Sana, who was now crying silently. And for the first time, Arif understood. There was far more to the story than he could have ever expected. Arif stood there, stunned, trying to make sense of the revelation. His mind raced, struggling to connect the dots. Faizan? His own brother? The confusion was overwhelming, and for a moment, all he could do was stare at the two of them in disbelief. Sana's tears streamed down her face, her hands trembling as she reached out to him, but Arif couldn't bring himself to move. Everything he thought he knew about their marriage, about his life, had just been turned upside down. Sana spoke softly, her voice breaking. "I never wanted this to happen, Arif. I was trying to protect you. Faizan was here for me when you weren't. But we never crossed that line. He's not what you think." Faizan nodded, his face solemn. "I've been watching over her, but nothing between us was ever more than that. We knew we had to tell you the truth, but we were scared of how you'd react." The tension in the room slowly began to shift as the weight of the truth settled in. Arif's heart ached for the years of misunderstanding, the lies that weren't really lies, but omissions born out of fear. There was still so much to rebuild, so much healing to do, but for the first time in a long while, Arif felt a spark of hope. His relationship with Sana and the truth he now knew could still lead them toward something real, if they were both willing to fight for it. But only time would tell if they could heal the wounds that had been inflicted.